Hi! I have a client's racket here that I'll be restringing. So I thought, why not create a video on how to string a racket while I'm stringing this racket? Seems obvious, right? Let's get into it. I'm showing you the butt cap there because I am mounting this racket upside down. It is more commonly practiced though that the racket should be mounted right side up. And you'll notice as I was tightening the side support arms, the red knobs, I was hand tightening with all of my fingers. And when I tightened the billiards at 12 and 6 o'clock, I was finger tightening using my middle finger and my thumb. You'll notice that I'm working off of a set of strings, so I'm simply going to cut it in half to string this racket two-piece. And as I uncoil the string, I have reference marks on my stringing machine, so I'm just measuring it off there. And then I'm simply going to just cut it in half. Now if you're working off of a reel, I did another video measure the exact amount of string, so make sure to check that out. I did want to mention, since I'm restringing this racket, I did have to cut the old strings out of the racket before mounting it. So make sure you check out how and why to cut a broken string. I'm starting the main string installation here for a two-piece string job. So what I'm doing is running both ends through the throat, matching it up there at the head and pulling it through. So you can see that the center loop is right there at the throat. There are various methods on how to clamp and tension the very first string. And I did another video starting main strings and shared 5 different methods on that video. So in my case here, I am using a clamp riser, which basically lifts the string clamp up into the perfect height so I don't have to hold it in place while tensioning the first string. Using this method, it allows me to bring my string clamp from the left side of the frame over to the right side for that first right main. And what I'm going to do is now tension on the first left main and bring the left string clamp back to the left side of the frame. There are a couple of reasons why I use this method to start my main strings. One, I want to make sure that my 2 string clamps are adjacent to each other right there at 12 o'clock. And what this will help me do is set up the rest of my main string installation where I'm only going to overlap by 1 string. Now if you want to get more information on main string installation, alternating overlap, check out this video. The second reason why I use this method is it eliminates the use of a starting clamp on the outside of the frame. So if you remember when I started that first pull, I had that string clamp on that first right main. I didn't back it up with a starting clamp. So if you feel like you want the extra insurance of holding that string in place, feel free to use a starting clamp there. So let's say you don't have a clamp riser that'll lift your string clamp to the proper height. I did another video where I use a Kimoni starting block, and if you have one of those, check it out in this video. As I complete the rest of the main strings, I did want to talk about a few things you should pay attention to. One, if you're stringing with natural gut for the very first time, it's quite different from other strings. So if you need help with that, watch this video, Stringing with Natural Gut 5 Tips. The second thing I wanted to mention was consistency in your clamping speed. So I'm using an electronic constant pull machine. So I have an audio notification when the tension head has reached the tension. So what I'm going to pay attention to is I'm going to wait for that notification and then move my string clamp over to the next string. So I want to make sure that's consistent. Now because this is a constant pull machine, it is a factor that could affect the overall tension in the final string job. And if you want to get more information on that, I did a video, Clamping Speed Technique, Stringing Fast versus Stringing Slow. However, let's say you have a lockout machine. There is another factor that you should consider that could affect the overall tension in your string job. So check out this video, Lockout Machine, Consistent Tensioning and Streamlining Technique. As I pull tension on this last main string, there are two schools of thought, and either way is acceptable. One is to maintain the same tension that you use throughout the racket, and two, to increase the tension either by a percentage or a number of pounds. In my case, I did increase it by 5 pounds. But if you want to check that out and decide for yourself which method works for you, make sure to check out tie-off tips and techniques. As I'm tying off the other main string, there are various knots that you can use to tie off, and I featured 3 of the top tie-off knots in this video. In this situation, I'm using the Parnell knot. As I cinch the knot, you'll notice that I'm holding with the pliers there, but I'm going to release the base, then the string clamp at the top. And this is to reduce the chance of the string clamp marring the string from the drawback of the last string. As I prepare to install the cross strings, this is where you're going to find takes the most practice and time. Now when I start the cross strings, you're going to notice that I'm actually starting from the 3rd cross string from the top and weaving that through. And if you want to learn why I do this, I did another video called Install Crosses Faster and Reduce Friction. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm only using about 3 feet of string to install the first 3 crosses. And by doing so, it's faster and you're reducing a lot of friction. And this is one of the tips that I feel a lot of stringers can use to improve their stringing technique when starting their crosses. You can see I'm pulling enough string length to reach the tension head, and I'm going to secure that first string using my string clamp. Now this method that I'm using is unique to this particular machine, and I'll show you why later. So for all other machines, you have 2 options. One, you could tie a starting knot and pull tension on that first cross. Or 2, you would have a starting block or offset tube along with a starting clamp on the outside of the frame, securing the string and then pulling tension on that first cross. So here's where I wanted to show you what's unique about these string clamps. You'll notice that I'm moving that right side string clamp right next to the left one so they can go side by side, which other machines can't do. So let's say I don't have these special string clamp rails. What I would recommend is using the method where you're using a starting block or offset tube along with a starting clamp. And here are the reasons why. The first reason why I would recommend using a starting clamp on the outside of the frame is to reduce the stress on the anchor string. And although there are special ways you should tie a starting knot, I just feel like tying off the string using a starting clamp helps with high tensions and thin string gauges also. And the second reason is when you're using a starting knot at the top and pulling full reference tension, there's no drawback on that string. So when you reach the bottom and tie off your last cross, there is going to be drawback. So as a result, there's going to be a tighter string tension on the top compared to the bottom. Whereas if you use a starting clamp on the outside, both top and bottom will be tie-off strings. Now if you want to learn more about this, I have a video, starting blocks and the offset tube. Earlier I mentioned the cross string installation is where it takes the most time and practice, and it's mainly in the weaving of the cross strings. And there's 4 techniques that I've seen stringers use. One is the pulling technique, and that's what I use. So you'll notice that I have the end of the string and I'm pulling it through towards my body there. There's also the pushing method where stringers will hold the tip of the string and snake it through away from their body. The third is a stitching technique that the tip of the string is pushed up and down like a sewing machine. And the fourth technique, I've seen a combination of the other 3. So whatever method you use, you just want to practice and become proficient and, well, efficient really in the way that you use your technique. Speaking about efficient, I posted another video titled Stringing Technique and 5 Tips to Be More Efficient. Alright, so let's take a look at this string that I just tensioned. I'm releasing tension there, but you'll notice that there's an untensioned string right there. I'm leaving that untensioned on purpose, and for the reason that it's easier to weave each cross string, and it does help reduce the friction. So this is called the one ahead technique, and in this video I have two methods that I'll share with you. Alright, so let's pay attention to what I'm going to do with my left hand right there. I'm holding that string in place as it was being pulled back by the tension head, and that's to ensure accurate and consistent tensioning. So we'll take a look at it one more time, but I did a video where I experimented by not holding a straight line, and you can find out the results in that video. Earlier in the video I mentioned how consistency is key, but if you can string in less time and be consistent, that's always a good thing. So you can see after I weave the string here, I'm holding the string tip in my left hand, and I'm going to transfer it into my right hand right there. So by doing this, I don't have to go looking for the string end after I weave each string. So this saves some time. And I did post another video, time-saving tips, so you can check it out here. Speaking about time, how much time do you think it took me to string my first racket? Well, if you guessed an hour and a half, you're correct. So at the very beginning, it will take time to string a single racket. A lot of it has to do with learning the proper steps in order to string a racket properly and avoid stringing errors. If you want to learn how to detect and avoid stringing errors, well, you're in luck. I did post another video with that title, so you can check it out here. So hopefully with practice and patience, you'll be able to bring your stringing time down to 30 minutes. That's the guideline or the goal that I give my stringing students. Oh, and I tell them that they have to be able to hold a conversation if needed. If you'd like to learn more about my journey as a racket stringer, I created another video titled Racket Stringer's Journey. In that video, I described 3 phases that all stringers experience in their development. Now there is a 4th phase which some stringers experience. Maybe you could be one of them. As I'm finishing up the racket here, weaving the last few crosses, I'm not having any hard weaves, so I can't really demonstrate it. But if you're stringing a racket and you're noticing it's getting very challenging to weave those last few crosses, you might be experiencing a hard weave, so you can check this video out. Before completing this racket, I did want to mention that my average stringing time is about 20 minutes to complete an entire racket strung properly. Now if you want to watch a fun video where I strung a racket improperly under 9 minutes, check out this video, but remember it's for entertainment purposes only. As I'm finishing up the racket, I'll leave the racket mounted in the machine for the purpose of straightening the strings, and it's easier while it's still in the machine. So you can see that I'm using my fingers here, pulling the main strings outward a little bit. And for the crosses, I'm using a setting off all, and it is blunt, so don't worry, I'm not stabbing the strings there. But I did post another video on using this tool, so I'll leave it here. Thanks for watching, happy stringing, and let your strings play.